Okay, welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you here. This is our new grantee onboarding webinar. My name is Katya Biener. I am the 2025 Sea Grant Fellow with the State Coastal Conservancy. I'm joined by Sarah Haugen, who's a project manager, and Linda Tong, who is the deputy program manager. And also we will be pausing periodically for questions if you guys have any questions. And if you have any pressing questions, maybe you can put them in the chat, but we will be pausing for questions throughout our webinar, just so you guys know. So first of all, congratulations, you made it here. We understand how much effort it takes to apply for a grant. So thank you guys for your hard work, and we're so excited to work with you guys. Yeah, and excited to see what you guys have in store. So this is the general order of our workshop today. So we'll start with the grant management, go into conditions precedent, work program, actually starting work for your grant, progress reports and invoicing, as well as project completion and wrapping up everything. So starting with our grant agreement, this is a document that outlines how and when funds can be dispersed. This is legally binding, so it means that formal changes require amendments. You'll be working with your grant manager to draft your grant agreement. There are 3 important dates that you will need to know. So the first date is the completion date. So this is when your work must be completed by. Then you will have your final request for disbursement date. So this is when you send your final invoice, when that final invoice gets sent. And then you have your termination date, which is when your grant will officially close. And another thing about the grant agreement is that you'll be given a grant number that will be used on all future documents, invoices, that sort of thing. So now we'll move into conditions precedent. This is a list of what a grantee has to submit prior to authorization to proceed with your project. So here's a list of some things most of these things you will need. Some of them are a little bit more specific. The first 3 we'll go over in greater detail. So the first one is your board resolution from your board accepting our funds. The second one is proof of insurance. The third one is an Eco-Atlas entry. And then if your project has physical improvement, but you don't own the property, you will also need a landowner agreement. You'll also need to show that all of the necessary permits have been obtained to do this work. And then you'll need to submit a work program. This includes a budget, a schedule of tasks to be completed, and also a plan for acknowledgement of our funding. So starting with the grantee board resolution, hopefully most of you have gotten our board resolution by this point, saying that, hey, these are our funds, you're authorized to use them. And so then we need you guys to send back a resolution from your board saying, we accept these funds and we confirm that we have basically the means to do the project. With this grantee board resolution, it also authorizes one designated person to act as a representative of the grantee. So saying this is the person who's going to represent the grant. And this template can be found by clicking the link. It's on our website. Perfect. So next up, we have proof of insurance. And amounts and types of insurance can vary by project type. So you'll have to check your grant agreement, but typically with our grants at a minimum, you will need general liability, automotive liability, and workers' compensation. Some other types of insurance might include things like boating insurance, but it's really just specific to your grant. So make sure you check that grant agreement. Okay, lastly, we have our Eco-Atlas entry. So California Eco-Atlas is a program that we use to track different habitat projects across California, but the SFBRA really uses them for the Bay. And as you can see in this screenshot, it shows you things like, oh, what's being completed, what's in construction, and you can include a lot of different things in your Eco-Atlas entry. So it's best to keep it up to date and keep it as accurate as possible and have like lots of information in there. It's really helpful to us. It's really helpful to the public who can access it to see what kinds of projects are being done. So you guys are required to use the project tracker tool to create and maintain your EcoAtlas entry. You'll work with SFBRA staff to create this entry. Sarah and I will be reaching out to you guys, and if you need any help, we're happy to provide you with lots of resources and any other assistance you need. And then really a great starting place for this is included in this link here where we have project tracker instructions for grantees. Perfect. So now we'll move on to the work program and I'll hand it over to Linda.
Thanks, Katya. Well, the work program sometimes will be referred to as the work plan. It's part of the required documentation that's listed in your grant agreement as something that we need before starting work on your project. The work program is a roadmap for what you'll be accomplishing with your grant. It includes some more specific details on the tasks, the deliverables, the project schedule, as well as a budget for your project. And this work program is important when you are actually billing to your grant because you'll need to match the tasks and the budget in your invoices to what's in your work program. As Katya mentioned, while the grant agreement can only be changed through a more formal amendment process, the work program is more of a living document, and you can change that more easily. Just work closely with your project manager so that the work program reflects the current budget between the tasks and the schedule for your project. And again, work closely with your project manager if there are any updates needed for that. We'll provide you with a work program template. It's online, and your grant manager will can provide templates to you. And we'll go through some of the key aspects of the work program next. So one of the first things you'll see when you look at your work program template is an area that asks for your project description. This is meant for you to provide a concise high-level summary of your project. You'll want to state the project's goals and what will be done to achieve them. This description should match the description within your grant agreement and should also match closely with a high-level description in the staff recommendation that your grant manager presented to the board. And again, keep this brief. You'll be able to go into a little more detail about the specific tasks lower down in the work program template. The next section you'll see in the work program is the scope of work. You'll describe your project tasks in a little more detail. We ask for a narrative description that contains important details for each task. That should include what you'll be doing, where you'll be doing it, and when. And you can have, as you can see here, you can have a task and then subtasks underneath to break it down even more. The narrative portion of this section of your work program contains outcomes and the task deliverables, which are the work products that are produced through this task. So for example, if the outcome of a task is to conduct an assessment of permitting needs, a suitable deliverable would be, for example, a guidance memo for permit acquisition. And just keep in mind that these deliverables are tangible products that you can submit to the authority. And a couple other notes. The way you set up your tasks, again, is how you will be billing us. And so these tasks should be major bins of activity. And again, within the narrative, at least you can break it down into subtasks to provide a little more detail. And just overall, work with your grant manager so that the structure of the work program and tasks are clear so we understand the work that's being done, but high level enough so that it's easy for you to bill us and for us to review. Next section is the schedule. As Katya also mentioned, in the grant agreement, there are 3 major dates to keep in mind. So these will be reiterated within your work program schedule. The work completion date, work with your grant manager to confirm that. The final request for disbursement, which is your final invoice, and then the grant termination date. That will have some buffer time, so there's enough time to wrap the whole grant up and get all your final deliverables in, make sure all the final billing is in place. And then the table below that, you'll fill out the same task numbers, task titles, and deliverables that you described in the scope of work section, plus the estimated start and completion dates. And this table is really helpful for you to look at your schedule and deliverables quickly, all in one place. And then below that, we'll ask for your budget. And again, this should include the same task numbers and task titles that you include in the scope of work and schedule sections. But this table will include the amounts that you have allocated for each task. Typically within this budget, you don't need to break it down by subtask. You can always provide a more detailed budget to your project manager, but this work program, we want to keep it relatively high level again, so that it's easy for us to review invoices, and since they'll be checked against the work program. We do ask for some details on your budget in more narrative form. We'll want to know the types of direct costs that you are including in your project. This can include project supplies, travel costs, staff time, stipends for community members if it's a project that includes that. And again, we just want the types of direct costs listed here. In terms of indirect costs, typically the maximum amount that we allow for indirect or overhead costs is 20% of the grant award. Indirect costs include things like rent, utility bills, general purpose equipment, and though you're allowed to bill up to 20% of your grant total, we just want to make sure that you all are calculating that indirect cost rate based on accounting standards, and be sure you can justify that indirect cost rate and keep records of your expenses as the best practice. There'll also be a section where you can list out contractors, any subcontractors you'll be using. These are entities that you'd be hiring to perform work under your grant, and we'll ask for the name and a brief description of their qualifications and their scope of work. And templates are on our website. And final section of the work program will be us asking you for a plan for acknowledgement of our funding. We want to be acknowledged in physical acknowledgements such as signage, particularly for construction projects, also in communication materials that you might be producing. Digital acknowledgement is also great. That might look like website posts, social media posts, and this ask for acknowledgement of our funding helps ensure that the public knows how public funding is being spent. And we have our logo and guidance on how to use our logo and how to do acknowledgements of our funding online. And once you have your work program finalized with your project manager, we'll get to actually starting work on your project. Once you've completed all the required documentation to starting your work, on the project, your grant manager will send you a letter, a notice to proceed letter. And once you receive this letter, you can start work on your project that you'll be billing to the grant. And that was an example of what a start work letter would look like. We can pause for any burning questions. Oh, but it sounds like people have been asking in the chat as well. Feel free to move on to the next section if no burning questions right now.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Linda. So now we're into the part where you're actually doing your project and you're billing to the grant. We do this through this invoicing through a request for disbursement form. I'll go into the sections in more detail. As Katya and Linda talked about, this should be consistent with the tasks in your work program. It's really important because it's the basis of how we see what you're billing for and make sure it's fitting with what was approved by the board. You should be requesting invoices, or you should be invoicing no more than monthly and no less than quarterly. Each invoice package will include a progress report. We have a template for that. This RFD and your backup documents, which are invoices, or which are invoices from your contractors or receipts for things you purchase. We will be routing these for signature after review, and that's when you know that it's being processed. We have guidelines online for this, but I'll be going over more detail right now. So this first page, as I mentioned, we'll have a section for your different work program tasks and the budget. That dark blue section will stay the same, and then you'll just be filling in what you spend in that period. There's helpful formulas in both the PDF and the Excel form, so hopefully it's not too difficult to be tracking where you are with your grant. At the very bottom, you'll see there's a section for withholding. This is typically 5% that we keep until the end of the grant as kind of an assurance that the project will get done. And this is delivered back to you after you complete all of your deliverables for the grant. The second page breaks down, one thing on this page too, there's a section for signature, but don't actually sign it when you submit it. You'll do that during the DocuSign process that your project manager initiates. On the second page, this is where you actually break down what you're charging for in that period. The first section is materials and equipment. So these are things you might buy if you're doing a physical project or things like that. You'll put labor in the second section, which can really just be the position and their hourly rate with the number of hours they worked. We don't need to have timesheets attached for this section. Then there's a tiny little line there for indirect cost, which, as Linda mentioned, should be what you calculate that your organization or agency needs to do business. And the last section is subcontractor charges, and you can provide an invoice to support those. And again, this should all calculate and match the total on the first page. As I mentioned, you'll include receipts as your backup for these expenses. So for things like Amazon, you want to make sure it shows that it was shipped. That's just a detail where we know it was actually ordered as opposed to something in your cart. We cannot accept bank statements. We really do need the receipts that you have. So make sure you keep those receipts for any purchases you make that you tend to bill to the grant. You can bill for mileage using the general mileage reimbursement rate, which right now is 70 cents per mile, but usually changes annually. Or if you're doing travel with a rental car, you can provide the gas receipt and the rental car receipt. Lodging would be a hotel receipt, parking and tolls. And if you're billing for any of this travel, check the Cal HR meal reimbursements page. That's the rule we follow for travel. As I mentioned, provide any of your subcontractor invoices as backup. Some subcontractors might be a cultural resource specialist, a community engagement specialist, design consultant, or any other project-related accounting or technical assistance, people that are helping you carry out the scope of your project. The progress report is very important because it kind of provides us with some background to what happened. So there might be a receipt for something, but it's helpful to know why you bought that thing. So this just highlights the work you completed as it compares to your tasks in the work program, and you provide an update on how things are going. It's great to have pictures and stories when possible, but generally this just kind of gives us backup for what you're billing for, and it lets us know how the project is going. You can generally keep it brief. It's a balance. We don't need to have huge narrative on this, but just enough to know what's going on. The way it works when you've gathered all these materials is you'll email the SFBRA invoice email address with the project name and contract number, and you copy your PM on your grant manager on the email. You'll put into one PDF the RFD, the progress report, and your backup documents. I'll just note that we mentioned deliverables earlier. Those can be emailed separately to your project manager outside of this invoicing process. Once we've received all of that, our contracts team will review this for consistency and make sure it looks good. Then the project manager reviews it and will resolve any issues that arise with you. Once it looks good, we'll route it through DocuSign for all parties to sign. Once that's complete, the MTC finance team will be cutting you a check to mail you for the invoice. I'll note that for your first grant, it's a good idea to just email your project manager. If you're new to government grants, it's just kind of good to have a first check. But once you've done your first few invoices, just use this process. We do have the option of advance payment if it's difficult for you to get paid in arrears for your work. If you have any issues with liquidity or cash flow, talk to your project manager, and we can each case will be evaluated on a few different things. If you're approved for this payment method, this is what you'll use for your full grant. To request this option, email your grant manager with your organization name, your project, the agreement number, if you have it yet, an explanation to why you need advance payment, and an example of timesheet records showing how you're tracking your staff time. And this is only for the billing for staff time. And your grant manager will take it from there. Throughout your project, keep us involved. We'd like to know how things are going. Your PM might suggest to have regular little check-in meetings, or just invite us to site visits, events you have, public events, press conferences. We like to hear how things are going. It's also good to let us know if things aren't going well. We can try to help you if things are going awry. So just keep us in the loop. That brings us to project completion. So this is when you've finished everything, you've done that report, you've built that thing you were going to build or restore. What you'll submit is a final invoice for any remaining project costs and your withheld amount that we've been keeping. You'll complete a final lessons learned summary on the project. This helps us see how it went, any challenges you faced, and we can share these learnings with other grantees and agencies doing this kind of work. Especially if you have something like a pilot project, it's great to know how it went. If a project requires monitoring and maintenance, we'll ask you to provide regular reports after project completion. When all of these things are submitted and anything else that's included in your grant agreement, there's a section for project completion, then you'll be done and we'll pay out your final invoice. So everything we've shared is on our website, but we will share it with you after this. Your project manager is a great resource. They can answer any questions you have. And that's the end of our slides, but we're happy to answer questions now.
Thanks, Sarah. I also want to mention that we are constantly trying to improve our processes, and so many times our forms might be adjusted or revised. And so, your grant manager will let you know if there's any change, or feel free to keep in constant contact with your grant manager just in case there are updates. And if we do updates, they'll be uploaded to our website. Oh, I see a question
Yeah, Alex,
about.
yeah, I'll put that link for the resources in the chat. Any other questions? Yeah, Hollis.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're talking, but you're currently muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. My question was, with the board resolution, do they actually have to record the votes, or can they just create the resolution?
Well, I think typically what we've seen is like this item will be brought to the grantees board and they will sign off on it. So if that means a vote, I think, yeah, typically there is a vote. Or maybe it's on some boards like consent calendars where you don't need like a separate item for just accepting this one grant. That makes sense. We'll just want to see something that's like signed off by your board.
Okay. Yeah, because they've done board resolutions before, but like they'll actually take a vote. Our board meeting they're not going to meet before this is needed. So the secretary is creating the resolution. So I just wanted to get clarification on if you needed the actual votes, because then she'd have to send it to the entire board.
Maybe it'll be more clear if you once you see the template.
I have the template.
Oh, okay.
She has the
Yeah,
template.
we'll just want
Okay.
something that's signed off. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions about these items are required before you start billing to your grant?
Hi, Sarah. Did you see the question I put in the chat? It was about subcontractor agreements.
Oh, yeah, we don't necessarily have a template for that. We just like to see them once you've entered an agreement, or at least just let us know who you're working with, and we can look into their qualifications. And we don't have to review them before you sign them, but generally just like we want to be in the loop because we have to approve expenses for those subcontractors. So if you're, it's a good practice to let us know who you're thinking of hiring. Yeah.
Okay, great. And yeah, we'd write them on the work program.
Yeah.
Thanks. That answers it.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Sure.
the presentation today.
Thanks for coming. And I'll also mention, it's okay if you don't know everyone you're planning to work with when you make the work program. We can approve subs as we go. I personally usually make a document that says a list of approved subcontractors that goes in tandem with the work program, so it's flexible.
Yeah, you can just email your grant manager and say like, we plan to work with this subcontractor, brief qualifications, what they'll be doing, and then they can be approved by email.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, Erica.
Maybe this is more for just a question for the our program manager. RFPs will have to be approved by the project manager or the program manager before we go out, correct? For hiring subcontractors. I mean, we went through the first phase for a feasibility study for our last grant. I know there were special things worked into our project scope, but I wasn't sure if that's the typical that if we're hiring a design firm, that'd be someone that you guys have to approve first, or the firm has to, I mean, as far as the RFP needs to be approved first, or that's something the city can move forward with on its own once the grant agreement is written.
Yeah, I'd say it kind of depends on how you structure the work program. Sometimes project managers will say, we want to see a draft RFP from you. Others will just say, we just want to see the completed one. So just work that out with your project manager.
Okay, great. Thank you. There was a lot of other steps in our last round, so that's it was part of our program. So
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
And if you have any questions throughout your grant, reach out to your grant project manager. I feel like we've been using those terms interchangeably, but typically we say project manager, but you might call them your grant manager. And we are always happy to help. Well, maybe we stay on for a couple extra minutes in case there are lingering questions. But again, your project manager will be sending you templates for all the documents that we'll be needing, and they're posted on our website as well. And again, we'll let you know if there are any tweaks to any of the templates or invoicing, forms that we require.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate getting you all together at once.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, I'm gonna end the meeting, or at least I can't end it. I can leave. Maybe only Linda can end it.
Oh yeah, I can either leave or end meeting. Just making sure there's. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bye.
Bye.